Hey everybody, Greg Pruitt here with Idaho Dispatch, and today I am joined by Danny Merkus and Katie Sullivan. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Good, no problem. So we're gonna, I guess, first talk a little bit about why you guys are here today. You're both nurses and have been nurses for a very long time, and both of you are former St. Luke's employees, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so before we get into some of the topics that we've discussed previously, I wanted to, I guess, first let the viewers know, you know, what your credentials are, how long you've been in nursing, and kind of what you did, and just kind of briefly, both of you have you explain that. So
You go ahead.
I've been a nurse for 25 years. Uh, Most of my career was in the emergency department. I was an ER nurse for about 19 years. And the last 6 years, I've been working in the pre-op department at St. Luke's. I was a charge nurse for many of those years. I was a clinical educator. Was awarded by St. Luke's Nursing Excellence Awards over the years, and just kind of poured my heart into that facility over the time that I was there.
okay.
I've been a nurse for 30 years, almost 31. I did oncology, hospice. I worked in the ER. I worked ICU, and I've been just recently with St. Luke's for 20 years in the pre-op and recovery area. I was a charge nurse there for, I don't know, like 5 years. Worked all over. Have a lot of experience.
Okay. So I guess to start off, anybody watching this right now is going to say, wait a minute here, we're in another wave of COVID. The Delta variant is out there, and both of you have recently left St. Luke's.
That's right.
And I mean, at a time when we're in the crisis standard of care and there's all this stuff going on, the very first question people are going to have is why? Why did you leave now when the hospital needs you the most?
Yeah, and that's an awesome question. And if you would have asked me the same question in June, I would have said, I'm not going anywhere. But shortly thereafter, I don't remember the exact timestamp, but I'll say mid-July, St. Luke's had announced that they were going forward with the vaccine mandate. And with that being said, what was explained to me was that as of September 1st, if we weren't vaccinated, we'd be putting on a written up escalating write-up process, with the last day being September 20th. And if I still wasn't vaccinated by then, I'd have to leave the facility. With that being said, I gave it a lot of thought. I used my experience both in the emergency department and dealing with sick people for 25 years. Weighed my own risk analysis, and I decided that the vaccine at this point was not something I was interested in. So I had made it a choice, with the ultimatum being I would lose my career of 25 years over this, based on what they had announced. So I had made my last day August 27th because of that.
Okay.
That was part of the reason, on top of some other reasons aside from that decision I had to make.
Sure. And we'll get into that in a moment. What about you, Katie?
And mine are a lot different. I did get the vaccine. I didn't want to. I initially said that I wasn't going to do it, and then I got a lot of peer pressure, both from family and coworkers, and I did get the vaccine. But I left for kind of different reasons, and a lot of it was because they didn't support my coworkers. These are people I've worked with for years and years, and St. Luke's hasn't been supportive in a lot of different ways, not just the vaccine, just the way we were treated. There's a lot of different reasons, management. And so I left for that reason. I just couldn't work for a company that didn't support their employees better than they did. And everything that we had done, all the things we'd gone through, I mean, I'd do anything for them. I've been there for 20 years. I thought I was going to retire from there.
Absolutely.
So what is that like? I mean, if we go back over this last year, especially, with the COVID issue, when that really began in January of 20, there was, I mean, just lots of nursing stories all across the country, and lots of people were very grateful for what you guys did. And the companies always seem to say, hey, we're really grateful for our employees and all of that. I mean, but what you're saying is, for you, it wasn't necessarily the mandate because you did get the vaccine. And I know you've talked about this a lot too, and so maybe you guys, this is a chance to kind of delve into this a little bit. But you guys are saying that the way you were treated before even COVID was a problem
Correct.
at St. Luke's. And so,
Absolutely.
Yep.
I guess let's maybe delve into that a little bit. And I know it's a big, broad question, but what are
It
some of the
is.
things, I guess, that people don't know about necessarily that are causing some of the problems?
A lot of it is staffing, which it is kind of hard to explain some of those things to people. I mean, I'm sure you know a little bit about nursing, but unless you're really in it, it's hard to explain. But there's a lot of control. There's a lot of, you lose a lot of autonomy. I used to be a very autonomous nurse and I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for years. But like now I have people telling me exactly how to do things, how to manage my time, how to take care of a patient, or telling me not to take as good a care of a patient as I'd like to because of time constraints or staffing issues, not having enough people, and so we're taking more patients. I wasn't directly, I mean, I took care of COVID patients, but not like people in the ICU who were taking care of really sick people day in and day out. But we did have COVID patients that had to have emergency surgery because we work in a place where, it was an emergent. They had to have surgery. So we took care of them, and I had no problem doing that. I mean, I felt fairly prepared. I think you feel a little different about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it goes back a little bit in history with St. Luke's and kind of some of the stuff that I've carried through the years that I've just kind of accepted. I was a charge nurse in that ER for many years, and it was brought before us as a group of charge nurses that they were making decisions based off of educational requirements to keep the role. I decided at that point, I had been an ER nurse for 17 years. I didn't find it worth my while to go back to school at the time. It wasn't worth the investment of the time and the money of it. So I just decided to change roles within the hospital with one that suited my degree. And that's when I joined Katie up in the pre-op area. Along the way, they took away our professional ladder, which was something really important in nursing. It was how we were able to use our clinical expertise as part of a reward process that gave us additional bonuses throughout the year.
Taking away clinical ladder was like a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because you have experienced nurses that know how to precept people, know how to do anything, and they took it away. So there's no way to ever reward our experience.
Right.
I think that's the best way to say it.
Can you, like in layman's terms, explain a little more about that? And then
Sure.
I guess also delve into what, from their perspective, what was their justification for removing that?
Honestly, to this day, I can't even speak to that.
Yeah,
I don't
know.
think.
Okay.
They had presented it as we're going to take this away, but we're going to replace it with a different program. That took, I'm going to say a year or two before we even heard about that replacement program. In the interim, what the ladder did was based off of your length of expertise, your clinical background, your education, how you performed,
how you were involved in
precepting, and education,
but education and being on committees. So having, being the voice for your other coworkers, being a committee. So all those things counted.
It rewarded your nursing,
experience.
your experience and just what you kind of put into the profession itself within the facility. So when they took that away, they decided that it was antiquated, I believe, is what they were kind of referring to, and decided to change it with more of a paths program, I believe they called it.
But what it is like for the new nurses who were still finishing up or getting their masters and were in school, then they could write these papers, and then those counted as points. Well, we don't write papers anymore.
Right.
We're in the blood and the guts, I'm sorry, doing the work and working our butts off. So it was like, it was rewarding brand new people.
Right.
Now I'm not explaining it very well either. It's inexplainable.
Okay.
But again, any facility I've ever worked at had a professional ladder for their nurses that you can gain points on, and according to the points, kind of dictated how much of a bonus you got every 6 months or every year. So since they did away with that, that also brought my hourly pay up, because as you get those bonuses, it gets built into your pay. It brought my pay down almost $2 an hour when they did that change. But they did something called a bridge. So they made it up for a certain amount of money. I think it was like a year or two.
You got it, I never got it.
Yeah, not everybody got that either. I don't know how they made those decisions. But anyways, once that bridge is paid, then your pay goes down to what the change was. So again, after my bridge was done, my pay drops $2 an hour from where I was in like 2017.
And we were never
So the-
able to get it back up to where it was. There was no way to do it. There was no way to make any extra money, especially precepting. I mean, that's having another person with you, watching every single thing they do, helping them, guiding them through the process, and that was the only way we can make $1 more an hour.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
very
right.
minimal.
It was, yeah.
And as of late, this last year, we finally got a substantial raise. I don't even remember what mine was. I mean, but before that, I haven't seen a raise in years.
No.
In years, because they said I've been maxed out on my pay. I'm at the top of the experience level. So there's really, other than getting a further education, which ultimately would take me out of the hospital, because if I went on for further education, I'd become a practitioner. And I'd probably practice outside of the hospital if that were the case. So I don't necessarily agree with promoting people into higher levels of care, because you take really good bedside nurses and take them away from that once you make them a nurse practitioner or whatever. And I'm happy being a bedside nurse. So for me, I was comfortable within my role within the department. I felt that's how I could best give my experience, and work. But, again, those are kind of tips of the iceberg. Some of the other things that happened over this year, when COVID first came out, I was pretty vocal about proper PPE. I've been trained at a national level doing DMAT. And one of the first things we, drilled into people's heads was, the proper PPE. And I didn't find that a surgical mask in a respiratory illness really serves much purpose, to be honest with you. I think we should be in N95s. I think they should still be in N95s as of today. And if I was there as a nurse right now with the Delta variant, I would be demanding that at this point. So I think that was huge.
Now I know when it started, they talked about a shortage of N95 masks. And in fact, I think even Dr. Fauci was saying, hey, you don't need a mask, you don't need a mask. And they were trying to get all the masks to the hospitals for nursing staff, or that's what was reported. So, I mean, what was the experience like then, I guess, in the beginning, as far as, I mean, if you want an N95 mask, would they just not provide it for you? Was it not available, or do you know?
So you touched on a couple of things. So when this thing first rolled out, I tuned into the news to get as much information as I could about it, watching Fauci daily, watching Cuomo daily, watching Trump daily, all of the news programs daily. And within a short amount of time, because of my clinical experience and because of my knowledge of PPE and proper techniques, I found myself kind of looking at the TV crossed going, no, that's not how that works. Watching people wear masks, touching their face 15 times and then touching surfaces and adjusting their masks and all the poor mask etiquette that, it really, it's been drilled in our heads as nurses, the number one, control of infection control is hand washing. So yeah, you can wear a mask on, but if you're touching all these contaminated surfaces onto your mask, I just found it was counterproductive. And then shortly thereafter, again, with any respiratory illness, again, I'm not going to talk from a scientific standpoint, but if it's a respiratory borne illness or a droplet illness, that kind of dictates what kind of respiratory protection you need. Hence why people that are taking care of COVID positive patients are in PAPRs or in N95s. So as we're out in the COVID screening lines all last year, because we got repurposed as pre-op nurses to go out and do the testing outside and screen people coming through the line, we were in paper masks and, face shields. And, if we're potentially that close to people having conversation or otherwise, getting samples, I would have thought we would have been in N95s or PAPRs, because we have that close contact with that. As far as the infection control within the department, we're a tight department, meaning there's a lot of people that work on that unit. We all share computers, we all share phones, we all share workspaces. And, again, how do you control infection control within that environment when people are constantly in movement, constantly using similar equipment, unless you have somebody full-time cleaning everything in between, that's another risk right there. So, I had written that paper, that was for the department, just kind of a reminder checklist of things to do in between patients, wiping down areas. I had recommended that on certain days we would use odd number rooms, and on the other days we use even number rooms to limit how much patient is coming through each room for cross-contamination. hospital-acquired MRSA and VRE and CRE and things like that are real concerns. And, you talk about COVID and how much hospital-acquired COVID is happening because of poor, cleaning in between. I don't know if there's any studies on that, but I would have to say that there's some element to that as well.
Did you guys
So-
feel like you were getting the support from administration to, during this last year and a half to deal with that stuff, or like getting the masks
You mean
needed and
supplies
cleaning?
specifically?
Yes,
or?
Supplies, N95 masks. You talked about
Right.
we need I mean, again, were those things not available to you? Did the administration give
I
you?
didn't have any problem getting an N95.
So, no,
if I
we-
needed one, I got
Well,
one.
they were locked up
They
in
were
our
locked up.
director's
You couldn't go get it. You had to
in
go
their
ask
office.
for
So
it.
we had to explain why we needed it.
Mhm.
So if we had a positive COVID patient, and I had a handful of those.
Yeah.
But I use a PAPR. I don't use an N95.
Not everybody can wear an N95. You can have a leak. I have a leak. He
Yeah,
has a leak.
they never seal for me. So, anyways, but the process was if you needed one to take care of somebody, you got it from our director. And then, the big wire racks, storage racks, we had one of those in our break room, in our conference room. And we were each given a paper bag to write our name on. And we were supposed to take a paper clip and clip the string of the mask inside the bag and leave it there for the next time we needed it. Whereas historically, those are more single-use items.
Yeah.
Surgical masks. I mean, I've had MRSA patients where I went through 50 surgical masks in an encounter, coming in and out of rooms and stuff, and now suddenly we're wearing the same surgical mask, or asked to, until it's soiled, or if not all day.
Okay.
Was there a shortage? I can't answer that truly. Did we ever run out of them? No.
But did we run out of other supplies though? All the time.
All the time.
We
Our
had
supplies were changing daily.
constantly. The types, the
Needles,
quality, the needles,
syringes.
not having the right things that we needed. So it wasn't just masks, because people always want to talk about masks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other
there's
things
a
in
lot of other
nursing
supplies.
that just we couldn't get. They were weird. They were different. We didn't know how to use it. And then it would be, oh, this is what you get now.
And did all that? Was that all that as a result of COVID?
Yeah,
Though,
because
so-
it had to
that's
do with
it. That's
supply
the
and demand-
the
supplies from what we
explanation given.
understand.
So
that's what they told us.
that's what we know. I
Right.
mean, I don't know. I can't answer that specifically,
Well,
but
yeah,
I assume that's why.
I do too.
So as far as that goes, that was challenging.
Yeah, it was.
But over this past year especially, we've lost so many staff members before the mandate, before COVID really got crazy even. It kind of started last year, but over this past year, we've had supervisors resign within our department. We were talking numbers recently. I think we counted somewhere between 15 and 20 nurses that left over better schedules at other facilities, better pay at other facilities. Sick of the politics at St. Luke's,
And this
and
is
it was
just one
frustrated.
little department. We're talking, this is pre-op and recovery.
Yeah.
I won't even include the OR
Yeah,
or
okay.
PAT. We're talking a itty-bitty department in
Within
one
a hospital.
Well, that's a lot of people
That's a
over
A year.
a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you're saying it's not. I mean, the mandate was certainly a part of it for some people, but you're saying
Yeah.
a
This was
lot of people were
before that.
leaving before
The mandate kind of pushed the rest of us over the edge.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of people unhappy for a plethora of reasons. And, over this last year, we lost a lot of those people over those reasons. For the last push of us, it was definitely, I can speak for at least 3 or 4 of us, it was the mandate that we decided to leave over. I won't argue the vaccine one way or another. That's personal choice. That's somebody's personal choice. If you choose to take that, that's great. And if you don't, that's great. But ultimately, because of my personal choice, I was faced with the decision of, do I want to end my career on a write-up and on a sour note when I've spent the last 25 years caring for people selflessly, going above and beyond, working 16-hour shifts with no breaks sometimes, physically abusing my body to care for other people with very little ask in return other than just, mutual respect. And when nurses are hurting, that somebody's caring for them. And right now I feel that, we still have amazing colleagues over there that are busting their butt daily.
That we left, that we feel really bad about.
That, I think of those guys daily. They're amazing nurses and they do amazing things. And I feel right now that nobody's really looking out after the nurse's best interests as a whole. And as an employee to a facility, your hands are tied with what you can say, because if you want your job, you keep your mouth shut and you just say, okay. I'm not employed by them anymore. And I feel like anything I say is to better improve my colleagues that are still there working. I hope something that I say helps them. So,
I mean, both of you guys have been there for a really long time. So has it always been that way? Is it like, hey, in the
No.
last 5 years, all of a sudden we had a new administration and it just totally.
That's the
what's
thing that I brought up at one point. And I hate to use that word management and say it so loosely, but it really was, it like wasn't my immediate boss. It wasn't even the next boss.
Yeah.
It was something above that.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons one of my immediate bosses quit was because she had her hands tied from the way higher ups. And she couldn't even take care of us the way that she knew she should be taking care of us, because they wouldn't let her. And somebody way up there doesn't even know what we do. They don't come down. I don't even know what their names are. I mean, I might know if you said it, but I've never seen them. They don't come around. They don't see you. And in that news article that came out last week, when one of the physicians says that he knows those people, he talks to them, he cares about them as individual persons, he doesn't even know who we are. He doesn't even know who left. I had not one acknowledgement from anybody other than my direct boss that I left, and I've been there for 20 years. Not one bit of acknowledgement, absolutely nothing. It's like I didn't even exist.
yeah.
And I'm just flabbergasted how you could be like that. I mean, I'm one of the most senior nurses there, and you just totally blew me off. And
Yeah,
I think it's
agree
way
with
up
you.
high.
I agree with her. We had awesome managers within our department, that showed genuine concern. I think, I agree that nobody really sat us down in full,
Right.
other than that person,
Yeah.
to just kind of share how much value we had. But I think
Right.
that's a symptom of how big St. Luke's has become. You asked, has this always been the case?
No.
When I first moved here, I came in from Denver and I interviewed at St. Al's first, and then I went to St. Luke's, and I really liked St. Luke's feel. It was small town. Everybody seemed to know each other. I was just impressed with, just how quaint it was as a community hospital. And I think it was just us in downtown at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly thereafter, Eagle came on board, and then they started getting other facilities. And before you know it, St. Luke's is on every corner. And when that happened, it really expanded the corporate brand. They changed to the My St. Luke's brand. We became extremely corporate. Suddenly all these faces were showing up that I had no idea who they were.
And let me interrupt, because it wasn't just that. It was then they started just getting rid of the personal stuff
Right.
that made it feel good. They started getting rid of programs and all sorts of things. So then all of a sudden it's just like we
It
were
was
just
pretty
numbers.
sterile.
It just totally changed, a totally different feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from there, it just seemed like a lot of lip service, a lot of thank yous that were empty. Again, I tie that into our raises and into our bonuses. I mean, we're not necessarily money-driven creatures, but those things make a huge difference versus a thank you card.
Right.
We bring a lot of value, as they're learning now how much value nurses bring to a hospital. You can't run a hospital without us. And suddenly I hear all these talks, after the fact that, we're giving bonuses now for all the things you've done over this last year. Well, we were there too, and, nothing was done. I hear mention of how they're going to offer bigger pay or bonuses to sign on and things like that. I don't know if any of it's true, but those are the things you hear. And as somebody, again, that's, invested 17 years of my career into that place, I feel very slighted. I've always said this, that I have always felt like I've been in an abusive relationship with that facility, that I've been asked to do things that most people would say no to, and I've done it without blinking an eye. It always seems like when the need was in my court, it was never being met. And I just feel like this last, them announcing this mandate and putting me in a place to make a decision about my career, which I knew would ultimately end up in having no job, no health insurance, which is where I stand now. And for them to walk that back at the last second after I've already made those decisions, that doesn't sit well with me. That's a big thing to announce, and to take that back last second like that is so wrong.
Yeah,
And
and
I don't
I
even
guess
know what
real
to say
quick
about that.
for people that aren't aware, what you're saying is that St. Luke's recently came out and said, "Well, wait, you're still going to have to get the vaccine eventually, but we're going to kind of back this up a little bit and do, was it weekly or twice a week? I think it was twice a week testing, right?
Mhm.
You have to get tested twice a week now,
Mm.
and so, but I mean, you guys have already left, obviously, and other people have
Even
left.
again, without getting into a huge discussion about that, I wouldn't
Sure.
agree to that either, the twice a week testing. So they would have lost me anyways over that,
Okay.
to be real frank. Again, mostly because of some of the things, the ways we felt we were treated, but ultimately because of just all of that. And I wouldn't have
I want to go
stayed.
back, I guess, to the letter you had mentioned from last week, where, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the whole thing
Neither
off
do
the top
I.
of my head,
Yeah.
but they said basically, look, like 98% or almost everybody has been vaccinated currently, and you obviously were at that time,
Mhm.
but we haven't had to fire anybody yet over the mandate issue, and I know that was something that you had mentioned previously
Well,
that
that's a
really
very
bothered
true
you.
statement. They didn't have to fire anybody because they changed their minds 3 days before they would have had to fire anybody, or whenever they decided. I just learned about it on Friday, the 17th, I think it was, of September. I don't know if it had been out for days, but that's when I learned about it. Uh, it was not a good thing to watch. As I watched, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? After making those decisions based off of the information given to me and the ultimatums given to me. Um, but as far as the vaccinated, unvaccinated thing goes, yeah, you were and I weren't, and I don't,
Right. And the thing is about that news article that bothered me is several weeks before, it's like, oh, we're fine. We're not going to have any problem. We're going to be able to run this place fine. That's not going to affect us. And now, obviously, he's wrong
yeah,
and he backtracked. And it's like, why didn't you think about that ahead of time? Why did you think about that before you got rid of these people that would like do anything for you? We want to serve. We want to take care of patients. That's our job. We like doing it. We're good at it. And then to just gosh, you'd ask for something and you just say, I actually had a director just get mad at me and just say, don't ask me that, leave. When it's always, I have an open door policy. And that's not how you treat a good
yeah.
employee. And that's why I left.
Again, so the public understands, we've been in a nursing shortage since I've been in nursing. I mean, I've never worked in ER ever, or in this department, maybe for a very
There was
brief
a
window
short
of
time when
time
we were doing okay, yeah.
where we're doing okay, but I'm talking fully staffed across the
Mhm.
board. You know, it just doesn't happen. I mean,
No.
I've not experienced that in my career. It might happen elsewhere. I just haven't experienced that. And again, within this past year, it was week after week of watching 2 to 3 colleagues walk out the door, which translated to us taking more call shifts,
Yeah.
us juggling our shifts around to cover days where we were short staffed, us having umpteen travelers within the department that we're trying to get familiar with and that are trying to familiarize themselves with us. That's not the same as having nurses that have been there for a while, that know what they're doing, that just click, that are a well-oiled machine. They've destroyed that well-oiled machine over this past year and let some key players walk out the door. Um, that to me is problematic. And we're getting distracted with the whole COVID discussion and the whole mandate discussion as to why St. Luke's is dealing with staffing shortages. That is a small component of it, but it all stems back to this past year and people just reaching their point in their career of deciding this is their end with St. Luke's.
And I don't understand why they didn't look more into retention. And we've talked about this.
Uh-huh.
They actually had somebody come around, what? How many months ago was it?
I don't remember.
3,
exactly.
4 months ago coming around to talk about retention.
4 months
Now
or so.
you want to talk about retention? Now that we're in a full-blown pandemic, you want to talk about retention. Why didn't you talk about this before and do something proactive about how to keep our nurses? Because you know it's going to get bad. Everybody knew it was going to get bad. Well, maybe you didn't, but I did. But
we all knew it.
But we all knew. But it's like, think about retention, keeping these people, treating them with respect, giving them some of the things. I asked, this is a very minor thing. I don't think it's that big a deal. I feel petty even saying it, but it is important. I wanted to drop some of my hours, okay? And they just said no. and I waited a year. And that was one of the reasons I left also, because it was like, you can't even give me that. I mean, I'll do anything for you. I work call. I come in on my, days off. We come in the middle of the night and we take care of patients who need to have their gallbladder taken out. I mean, it's like there's got to be some give. There's got to be some thought about how to keep good people there instead of just thinking that we're going to roll over and do anything you say.
And thanks for all you do.
And thanks for all you do. That's our favorite line.
We hate
Sorry,
that line.
we hate it.
Be specific.
What is, I mean, I'm interviewing you guys, your two people. You've told me about a number of others that have been frustrated. And like you said, the mandate may have been the final straw, but they had issues as well,
Sure.
Before then. What if St. Luke's comes out tomorrow and says, look, these are a couple disgruntled employees, everybody else loves it here. I mean, is that true? Is there a lot more people who are, look, I'm going to get the vaccine, I'm going to stay, but I'm not happy either, but I have to feed my family, like you said.
That's exactly what it is.
I mean,
Yeah.
what percentage would you say? I mean, this is just your opinion, obviously, of what percentage of the nurses that are left in there would you say are like, hey, we're sick and tired of this too, but we have to stay, like we don't have a choice?
I would say that's a pretty high percentage right
So
now,
would I.
honestly.
Yeah.
How many are going to be vocal about it? I don't know. Again, I get it. I've been there. There's been times throughout my career I wanted to jump up on, somebody's desk and say what I had to say, but I knew because of my job. In a town where you're a hospital nurse and in a town where there's only 2 or 3 hospitals, you got to be careful. You get put on a list of, do not hire essentially real quick that way. I think we've been careful over our career. But again, where I've reached because of a product of a mandate that was placed on me and a decision I had to make, I've already made my decision to separate from St. Luke's and from that world of nursing. So therefore, I could be as vocal as I want at this point. And, if somebody agrees or disagrees with me, that's their choice. You know what they say about opinions, and I've learned to not argue with an opinion a long time ago. So, but all I can say is I speak from my personal experiences. I'm not lying about anything. I'm being very frank with what I have to say for once. And the truth might hurt. And the public needs to recognize that we're, our whole practice is selfless in that we take care of people like they're our family, and we've been kudoed to the hilt from families that we've taken care of. That's what the public needs to understand, is that these facilities are losing long-term nurses that had such an investment within the community and such an investment within their profession. And it just seems like that's just going kind of unnoticed right now. It's all about the mandate. It's all about the COVID. And this has been a problem before all of that. I'm just finally in a position where I can speak to it because of the mandate and COVID. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise. And I want to use this opportunity to use my voice in hopes to help people like my former colleagues and other nurses that are still in that facility and in other facilities nationwide even, to improve nursing. I just feel like it's been a profession that's been neglected. When it comes to crisis, we're seeing how important we are in public health. And I just feel like it's our time to be vocal about it. And I encourage my former colleagues and anybody else to speak up. You have that right to speak up and say you're dissatisfied within your job. And if anything's taught me that, it's this time.
So it sounds like both of you are saying overall it's, it's shifted over the last number of years, and that it's become more corporate. I believe St. Luke's and St. Al's are part of Trinity Health. Is that correct?
I don't
Trinity Health.
know. I don't think
Luke's
St.
not.
Luke's is. No.
St. Luke's is not.
No. I think that's St. Al's.
I think
but
St.
not
Al's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But overall, it's become more corporate, and like you're saying, you don't know who even the top people are.
No.
That they don't come down and visit you guys and talk to you and do more than just thank you. That the pay scales have shifted, and is that? I mean, are there other things on top of that you think are key to what has happened in the nursing field? And is it just I mean, you can only, obviously you guys are St. Luke's employees, but do you know of nurses in other big hospitals that are experiencing the same issues, or is this just something you believe is happening within St.
So I
Luke's?
quit my job, and Danny did too, but I did get another job.
Okay.
I went somewhere else here in town, and I've met a lot of nurses there that are from all over. Luke's in like Nampa, and then nurses from Owls, and nurses, quite a few nurses from California, and it's really kind of everywhere. People,
Okay.
the nurses are feeling the same thing: not appreciated, overworked, the pay. I mean, it's not just pay, but there's a lot of other things, just the working conditions. So I don't think it's just here, and it's not just St. Luke's, but we just really see it because we've been here for so long.
Yeah.
Sure.
It used to be a real, I mean, we're a tight group. We're very good at what we do. We like doing what we're doing. We had great patient experience. And so I guess that's what makes it so hard is we put so much into it. It was so personal. So it just really hurts to have them just let you go and not a word, and like it didn't matter, and we didn't make a difference, and when I thought we did. So I think that's what's so hurtful for me. I look at it a little bit different than he does. I don't know, with just being female, it just a lot more emotional because
Sure.
I just, I got pretty emotional about when I left because I had just been there so long and I wanted to stay and I wanted to help the people I left. I feel so bad about my peers
Yeah.
that I left because they're just drowning, and there's only a few that are very experienced. The rest are all quite new, but I had to do it for myself.
So what was your last day like? I mean,
My-
nobody in management said, "Hey, we're appreciative."
My
or anything
immediate
like that?
boss, of course, cried. So did I. And my peers gave me a party, and I didn't get anything from Luke's, even though I've been there 20 years. If I had retired, I would have gotten something, but I got nothing. I got a check in the mail, and that's it.
There
My
was-
last
did
paycheck.
nobody
So I
from-
lost my ESL. You lose all that seniority, vacation, all that stuff.
Didn't
Just gone.
anybody from like I'm gonna say upper management just because
No.
I don't know.
No.
Nobody said, "Hey, can we beg you to do X,
no.
Y, and Z?" Or
I thought they
anything?
would. I thought they'd come to
Because
me.
Yeah.
you had actually gotten the vaccine, so that's
Yeah.
a little bit different of a scenario.
Right.
Where,
Right,
where-
right. What
You know-
can we do to keep you to stay? Mm-mm.
Right.
No.
And
Did
our
you-
day was on the last day, but that wasn't planned
Well,
either.
that was-
I had given a 3-week notice, but on the end of my second weeks, that week was really frustrating for me. And that day was extremely frustrating for me. And some of the conversations that I was exposed to just kind of prompted me to say I'm done. So I ended up that day writing a note to my director who came before me, and she's like, I get it, and that's kind of how I left. Not a lot of pomp and circumstance.
nobody from
So
upper management came.
no,
along?
I had a couple email dialogues. The first person I reached out to was the lady from HR that I've known since I've been there. She had worked there as long as I had, and I had asked her, if I didn't take the injection, what my final days are going to look like. I wanted to end my career with dignity and do my job, and I guess get walked out the door. So I wanted to see what it looked like, and her response was kind of funny because she goes, "I don't know, Dan, because I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not going to be getting it either." So I really didn't get an answer from her. And then I reached out to HR with the same questions. And my response, and I let you read that response, had nothing to do with the mandate. It had everything to do with, well, if you quit or if you resign or any of those things. They basically gave me the policy and procedure to how to quit the hospital. And I'm like, this isn't what I'm asking. I'm asking, if I don't do this, what is my termination process going to look like? So then I spoke with my boss, and that was when the write-up discussion happened, that the first one would be on September 1st and the last on the 20th, as far as that goes. So.
Okay. And then did you say you had given 2 weeks notice?
No,
or
I gave
anything?
3.
3 weeks.
Luke's requires 3,
They
and I
require
gave 3.
3.
So in 3
Yeah.
weeks, though, nobody.
Oh, I
Nobody
didn't
in upper
even have
management reached out?
acknowledgement when I did it. Even our immediate director, she came to me and she said
Sure.
something, but nobody said a word. It was almost like I thought, oh, did I send that? Maybe I didn't send. I mean, I didn't have any response from anybody. It was
Wow.
amazing. It's like, you're just going to let me walk out the door. You're not going to talk to me, sit me down, and nothing.
I had the same experience. Melissa, our former director, she's wonderful.
She's a wonderful person.
She sat down and, we had a serious talk, not in length or anything like that, but we each understood where we were coming from. And I felt like, my decision definitely impacted her. and now her department. But beyond that, I don't feel like nobody
No.
did. Nobody came to us, to
No.
talk to us through any of it. So
Which maybe that's normal, but I don't
I don't
understand the
know.
rationale behind that when you have a pandemic going on and you're short-staffed, and we had 8 travelers in our department, which is
Yeah.
unheard of. I've never
Yeah.
seen that
Can you
many in our
explain
department.
just for the public,
Oh,
what a
Yeah,
traveler
yeah.
is?
Would you like to?
You do it.
All right. So what a traveling nurse is a nurse that comes in usually from another state. They work for an agency of sorts. I learned that Luke's uses a brokerage of sorts. I forget the name of it, but they use a place that outsources these nursing jobs to multiple nurse agencies, I believe.
Mhm.
So they'll find a nurse from wherever that has OR experience or pre-op experience or whatever the need is. They bring them into the hospital. Usually they're paid at a much higher wage, and it costs the hospital more money on top of what even the nurse is getting paid because they have to pay an agency fee usually.
Okay.
These people are normally assigned for 13 weeks. So they sign a 13-week contract with the hospital. Usually the first 2 weeks or so, they're in orientation. So those first 2 weeks of that 13, they're really not even effective in patient care because they're being trained of how we do it. And then they're let off of orientation. And again, I don't know how to make people understand this,
I
but a
know.
nurse isn't just a nurse.
Right.
Meaning an ICU nurse, a med surg nurse can't just walk into the ICU and be productive. I mean, they don't know what they're doing in that environment for the most part. Just like in our environments, we have a lot of unique procedures that we do that unless you've done them before, have been trained to do them, which takes many weeks to be trained on. Our orientation process is at least 6 weeks long. You can't just function at that job level like we would. We can do that pretty much in our sleep. So you give your department all these traveling nurses. Some of them are very skilled, some of them aren't as skilled, but the translation is a lot of us that are there full time are constantly going behind them, making sure they're supported because they can't normally handle the loads like we can, the same amount of patients that we can. So it's taxing on all of us. Plus on top of it, we're trying to precept our own new employees.
Right.
That was as of recent when I last left, a month ago. Our unit educator was pulling her hair out, who's a good friend of mine, and she's dynamite. And she's like, I don't know how I'm going to orient any new people. She's like, we only have so many
There was
preceptors
so
now because
few
we're all gone.
Core nurses left. They were all travelers. There wasn't even enough experienced nurses to train the new employees.
Right.
It was that crazy.
So Katie and I were constantly with a new employee on our hip, which we both love to do.
But
But
it's
there
hard.
was a line behind them of people that couldn't have that experience yet because they didn't have preceptors. I think that was more so in recovery, but still, I mean.
And then to add to that is you have all these new employees who haven't been oriented to the PACU yet, to the recovery, so they can't take call.
Right.
So now all the nurses who are experienced and have had it have to take the call. We're talking call shifts. They want you to be on call till 7 a.m. Well, I start at 5:30. So it was just crazy.
It didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense, and it was too much.
And it was a dissatisfier.
It
I
was
mean, and
huge.
that's the whole thing. You asked what dissatisfied us as nurses along the way. You increase our call schedule. You say you can't be flexible on our schedule. Back when I was in the world of working weekends, if you told me I had to work every weekend, no, or every holiday, no. Things like that are the things that make nurses very unhappy real quick. On top of, you're going to run this department 3 nurses down today. You're not going to have all the supplies or different supplies today to make your job more challenging. Just all of those things. I mean, combine it all, then add the stress of the COVID over the last year and the
And
things
the
that we were
stress
asked to do.
Of very sick patients,
Yeah.
having families that are very unhappy they can't come back and see their family members, which we understand, but there's nothing we can do about it. So you're dealing with irate people in the lobby,
Sure.
and
Right.
we've got to take care of that. I'm a nurse. I am not a social worker.
Right.
Well, I am, but
We're jack of all.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the other thing that nurses are. I mean, we
Right.
are a jack of all. We have to take care of anybody. Meaning, we have to take care of the jerk and the nice guy. It doesn't matter who you are. We got to take care of you.
Right.
So sometimes we're in these experiences with patients, whether they're borderline personality or what have you, and we're put in these dynamics that normally, in a normal situation, you just walk away from that person because they're so rude.
Right.
But we're their caregiver or we're their servant at that point. So we have an obligation, to do that and do it with a smile on our face. And those things, when we get people that, because it happened daily, at times where people are nasty to you or whatever, we have to just take it as, as a nurse,
Sure.
that's part of the job, and I'm not whining about it. That's just the reality of it. I've been in physical altercations as a charge nurse in the ER over the years. I've been in more than I care to recollect, I, again, abused my body physically in the overall caring for people. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And, because of all of the sacrifices that I've made, and for myself with lined up with that mandate and with the choices I was presented with, that was a really hard pill for me to swallow, which I hope symbolizes how strongly I feel against the mandate, that I was willing to give up my career, give up my health insurance, give up all of that in a blink of an eye, decision that was made, it seems, really in my career. I mean, it happened so fast. Last year, I'm even up until this year, we were doing great as a team. Even though we lost people, we were still surviving. And I will be very surprised if they survive this one in the near future very easily. I think they will get past it ultimately, but this is going to be a challenge.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, Idaho is the fastest growing state in the country, right? And we saw that with the recent census. It was almost 20% growth over the last 10 years. This area in particular, the Treasure Valley, is just exploded with population. There's a housing issue and lots of other stuff going on here in the valley. One of the biggest topics I know that has been brought up over the last year and a half is the issue of hospital beds.
Sure.
And how many ICU beds there are. And I think Governor Little had mentioned there was like 400 or something like that across the state, and that all the ICU beds have been full. And so I guess for the public to maybe get a better understanding do we have a hospital capacity problems with ICU beds? Has the hospitals increased that over the last 20, 30 years? Or what is the issue there with the beds? Or is there an issue with the beds?
So let me answer that like the news answered did they lose any nurses over the mandate question real shortly. No. Capacity is never an issue, okay? Let me give you an example of that. So since I've worked at St. Luke's, I think they remodeled the ICU one time in that 7 years, maybe twice. But as far as expanding ICU beds at St. Luke's Meridian, that number hasn't changed in years. It's 14. It's been 14 forever. I used to go to bed meeting daily and discuss admits and discharges and all that as a charge nurse. And with that population expansion, any of us could sit at any given stoplight in town and count the out-of-state license plates on cars to see, that's a reality. I don't feel like they've done really much of anything to increase their capacity within St. Luke's Meridian. Now they, opened St. Luke's Nampa, which has, capacity for ICU. And obviously we have Boise. St. Al's has their facilities as well. But overall, I feel as a whole, we're behind facilities in this valley. I think there's examples of how St. Luke's could be more creative with their space. One example is the surgical center that they have in the parking lot out at Meridian. It's an outpatient surgical center. I don't remember the exact numbers, but there's several monitored beds within that facility, both pre-op, post-op, with 2 working ORs. So really that can be converted to an ICU overnight if you had the nurses to run it. That's the biggest thing. It's not the rooms. They have interventional radiology rooms. They have cath lab rooms, which I wouldn't use for patient care, but they have additional areas within the hospital that have the ability to take care of patients. Also, we have disaster plans in that facility. So let's say there's a huge disaster that happens. There's contingency plans where pre-op would take patients. Other areas of the hospital would take these floods of patients in. So they have those plans there to use other areas of the hospital for care. So let's say their ER is overrun and they have a lobby full of patients waiting to be seen. If they're not COVID and not, contaminated patients or however you want to call that, there's other areas within the hospital you can treat the less urgent patients. The year we had the H1N1 flu, they set up a huge tent in the driveway too late. It was on one of the last days we were seeing flu patients, but we had been asking for that for a while. And within that tent, if I remember correctly, I could have run 30 patients at a time through there as far as taking care of them. But again, where are you going to find the nurses and the doctors to do that? That's the bigger question. It's not the capacity. I don't think it's
No, I don't
ever the
think
capacity.
no.
You
It's
know,
the
we have
people to
hotels
work.
around. If we want to get creative,
Right.
take over a hotel and take care of patients there. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But in a crisis time, in a true crisis time, you use your imagination and you think outside the box. And you don't necessarily look to contaminate your whole facility with people that have an illness. Maybe you don't want them in your facility. That's how your facility might get shut down. That's how hospital-acquired pneumonias and MRSAs and VREs and things like that, these infections that people get while they're admitted in the hospital that didn't have it before they were admitted in the hospital. There's big studies on all of that cross-contamination. I don't know what kind of studies have been done in this COVID thing. All I could say is there are definite ways to get around capacity.
Okay.
It's a staffing issue.
Okay.
Can you meet the capacity of the staff?
And that's what was happening. They shut down one of the floors. There wasn't enough nurses. They could not open the floor. So we had to hold our patients down in recovery until they had beds up on the other floor. I mean, it's nurses. They
Right.
need to have
We had to
nurses.
shut down ORs because we didn't have enough
We
OR
shut down the
teams.
ORs. Yeah.
So that affects, you know, how many surgeries you can do in a day. It affects everything. All of it affects everything. It
But
all
if
plays
they
off of each other.
just ask the nurses to stay and just have a conversation, a face-to-face conversation, I would have stayed.
Yeah.
But I've got to have something. I got to have some respect. I need to have a conversation. I need to know that I even matter, and I
Yeah.
don't think I mattered at all, and that's why I left.
And giving the bare minimum
Yeah.
to
Oh,
keep
definitely.
us there.
Yeah.
You know,
Then
just
I'm-
the bare minimum, just what, you know, the market says we should give
Yep.
or whatever. If you
Yep.
want to cut the way and lead the way to, you know, avant-garde healthcare team or whatever you want to call it, you put your money where your mouth is and you get the team built in place and you make sure they don't go anywhere. And we at one point had that.
Yep, we did.
And I feel that has been completely destroyed over the last couple of years there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you know, I'm trying to just think of questions the public might have, and I guess the big question I just is, you know, why? I mean, if they're seeing what's happening, and you're talking about the shortages for so long, I mean, why do you think things are not changing? What would be your opinion maybe on why is the upper management, if that is the issue you're saying at St. Luke's, and you know, I'm talking, you know, up towards the top there, why do you think things aren't changing? Like, what is happening? Do you think that they aren't going, okay, look guys, we're losing nurses, we have a shortage long before COVID, now it's really bad, you know, why not change the direction that it's going if that's
I
what's
think there's a
happening?
real disconnect between the people up here and the workers down here. I really don't think they know what nurses do, what housekeeping does, what the people in the cafeteria do, what our caps do. I really don't think they know how it works. I don't think they've ever stepped on the floor and seen how it works. So they don't understand where the breakdown is. We see the breakdown. We can see it months before it happens. We know what's going on, and they don't see it, and they don't really want to hear. I think that's why one of our managers left, because she tried to explain to them, I need to have these requisitions for new hires signed today, because by the time we get the requisitions signed, by the time you look at them, by the time they're posted, by the time we have people apply, by the time we interview them, by the time we hire them, and by the time we train them, it's almost a 3-month, 4-month process,
easily.
and we need the nurses now. And those people wouldn't do it. They would not sign the recs, or like, oh no, we're okay. Your numbers don't show that
Yeah.
you need this.
It's all about numbers.
It is all about numbers, and they don't know what to do. They don't see it, and they're not really interested in seeing it. They want to get their money. They're looking at their numbers. They're looking about how great they look with a national accreditations. They're not looking at the human being part of it. That's my opinion.
Right. And that is spot on. I mean, I feel like we're their pawns, so to speak. I mean, we're there to do the work. You know, obviously that's why we're hired, but our voice is not heard at all. And again, for the reasons I shared with you, you know, I think there's a huge spectrum of what goes into nursing. You know, there's single parents, there's, you know, tons of different scenarios that bring people into nursing. Okay. It's all walks of life. But the common thread that we're trained in school is to do it selflessly and, without real question to, any of the stuff that you kind of are bringing up. Um, and in my career, I was guilty of that, of just going with things and saying, okay, because I needed my job, I needed my health care, I needed all those things. And you kind of pick the battle you want to die, the hill you want to die on in the battle. And some of these things were bigger than the others, and some I was a little more vocal than others, and some, I got what I wanted over some other things that I didn't feel were as important. This was really big this last year. Watching my entire team walk out the door, it was like, who's it going to be today? Who's it going to be? How many this week? Week after week after week, that is so demoralizing. And I felt like nobody was really lifting us up over this last year, other than empty words and thank yous and things like that. But we were like, where's our hazard pay? Where is the recognition? We're putting our butts on the line as nurses, and we don't even work in the unit. Those guys deserve insane props. The respiratory therapists, insane props. Those guys are eating that stuff for breakfast, and they get thanks for all you do. That doesn't go very far in a lot of our books. And, again, watching some of my colleagues walk out the door over schedule, over a couple dollars an hour more pay, that's disheartening. And that makes us that have been there forever, that do kind of just do the job because we love it, sitting there going, you're going to let another employee leave because you won't let them work on a Monday? Or you won't, take away some of their call because they're already here 5 days a week? That.
How about just sitting down with them and having a conversation, a nice conversation, an engaging conversation? Why you're leaving, really? What can I do to make it better? And they'd be surprised at the answers we come up with.
Right.
It's not about money. It's about just paying attention to what we need and what we need to do our job best.
And doing less with more always. Our conversations around a table, usually in our meetings, were, all right, guys, now you got to understand we're short. How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to get our patients back and get them into the OR on time and all this? Instead of, how are you guys doing? Yeah. This has been a horrible year for all of you. Can we just have a conversation about something normal instead of, we got to do more, we got to do it faster, we got to do it with less? Mm-hmm. That was pretty much what our meetings became. I feel as a caregiver, nobody was caring for us along the way. And I'm not talking physically. If we talk about nursing, we talk about holistic care of somebody, mentally and everything. And this has been extremely mentally challenging for us over this last year and a half. Again, I can't even imagine what the ER and ICU nurses are feeling at this point. When they announced that we could be repurposed back into previous departments we worked, I was on the phone with our mental health counselor like that day going, I'm like, PTSD is real in healthcare. If I had to go back to the ER tomorrow, I would be in a ball in the corner rocking myself to comfort, because I hung that hat up years ago, and the intensity that job requires to do it well, I'm just not there in my career anymore. So that was a really startling thing to hear, is that I could potentially be put back there. But, again, with the decisions I made and for the reasons I made it, that was very mentally challenging to really weigh, where do I stand in this whole thing, and to ultimately come to my decision that I've made and deal with the consequences that come along with that. I knew what they would be. And then to ultimately hear, just kidding, we're not doing it now. That was damaging. And at this point, even, I don't know how I feel about nursing even at this point. That really hurt, and it's going to take me a while to get back, to deciding where I go forward with this. But right now, I just feel it is not accurate to say that they haven't lost anybody over the mandate. Yes, it's accurate to say they haven't fired anybody because they didn't allow it to get to that date, but they lost several of us over the mandate.
So I guess in closing, I want you guys to have the opportunity to, close out with a message to either the public, to the administrators, to your former coworkers, and what do you want to say in the end is your final message, I guess?
For me, it's my former teammates and colleagues. You guys are all heroes. You guys all work hard daily. You guys all deserve more. And to the administrators of that hospital, and this goes for administrators across the country, really. You need to recognize the talent that you have on that team, what's left, and recognize the talent that's already left and ensure that you don't lose any more of that talent along the way. For the public, my concern for you, I can only hope that the hospitals can get experienced people on board. So as you guys seek medical care, you have it available to you. We'll continue being nurses, but just not at the facility that we had come from. Just know that our hearts are still in healthcare and that our hearts are for patients' best interest.
Okay.
And I'd have a message for my colleagues that I left behind, because I feel a lot of guilt about leaving them, even though everyone has to make their own choices. But they're an amazing group of nurses, and really, really smart and caring and compassionate. And I think St. Luke's really needs to look at the nurses that are still there and do whatever they can to retain them. And I would have stayed. So they need to think about some of the things that we talked about to retain the good nurses, and start looking at them as individuals and not just a group of your workers.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys sitting down with us today, and we'll, continue to interview people. If you have other folks that want to talk about some of the issues that might be going on, we'd be happy to sit down with them as well. But we appreciate, what you guys have done, and for all the work that you've done, and appreciate you taking the time to sit down. I know that, talking and speaking about these issues is not easy, especially where you both, recently left your jobs. And so thank you again for taking the time.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.